Hello, good afternoon. My name is Andrea Bodnari, and I am a teacher of the visually impaired, a orientation and mobility specialist. I also do assistive technology, and I do low vision rehabilitation teaching as well as some rehabilitation teaching. I got there through going to Salus University, and at the time there was a very low demand for vision professionals. So, as they were reimbursing, I said, "Oh, great, let's take everything." So I have had a lot of experience in terms of rehab teaching, working with children with visual impairments, teaching Braille. Primarily, what I'm doing is I do a lot of professional development right now, where I'm training other teachers on how to use assistive technology in the classrooms with their students as well as their adults. Most of that is devised around the iOS or the Apple platform. And what I'm here to speak with you today is about a little bit about orientation and mobility, the kind of services that are out there and available to you, as well as some of the apps on the market that would be able to make your life easier. One that I'm specifically talking about is BlindSquare, and BlindSquare is a GPS app that's designed to assist people with blindness and visual impairments. And as Lisa mentioned, I did bring a pair of our Aftershock headsets with us. And the Aftershock headsets are very nice. The difference between them and your regular earbuds is that these are bone conduction headsets. So instead of going inside your ears, they wrap around your ears, and they actually sit on the temple of your head. And that sound vibrates through the temple, and then you hear the sound, which works out very well, if you have a visual impairment and you're trying to cross the street. You would be listening for the sounds of traffic at that point, and you wouldn't want to have something in your ear. So it keeps your ears open and you alert to what's going on around you. Another use that you'll see them is that many of us use VoiceOver on our phones, and we're sitting there in the waiting room and everyone else is checking their phone and checking their email, and we're going, I wish I could do that, but I don't want everyone to hear my private information. So you could certainly go ahead and use a headset, still be listening for someone, and as well as using your VoiceOver. Some of the things that we have here today is we did queue up the BlindSquare event app for us. I don't know if anyone has had the opportunity to download it and try it out, but I do have some links up there for you to download the BlindSquare event as well as our BlindSquare full version. And there's also a code up here on the PowerPoint, LHON. So if you go to the Aftershocks website and you order a pair of Aftershock headsets, you will get 20% off using that code. So, let's get to the point. We're experiencing vision loss, and your eye care professional has told you that you're going to have vision loss. Before you quit your job, before you go crazy, you guys have resources. You have rights. There's no reason to just quit your job because you find out that you have a visual impairment. There are people there that'll help you. And who are those people? Well, first, the thing that you have, and before you decide that you're going to quit your job, is realize that we're all protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that act will go ahead and give you information, and I've posted up some links about the Americans Disabilities Act, that protects you from being fired because you have a visual impairment. There are services that will come in, to your employers and help with those resources. Now, what do I tell my students when they're applying for a job? Do you have to disclose the fact that you have a visual impairment? No, you don't have to disclose the fact that you have a visual impairment on your application. You don't need to do that. But when you get into that interview situation and you show up with a cane, they're gonna know, and they might want an explanation. So what I try to tell my students that I've taught in the past, is to say, hey, when you go into your interview, say, yeah, I do have a visual impairment, and I understand that you might be concerned that I might not be able to do this job, but I use these forms of assistive technology like screen readers, and I maybe use a magnifier, and I have an orientation mobility specialist that will come to my workplace and get me around the building until I learn it, and none of these things are going to cost you money as an employer. And then they're like, oh, and they start to relax a little bit. So a good thing to point is just advocate for yourself. Go in if you first find out that you have, you're experiencing a vision loss, inform your employer, because you can't fall under the rights of the Americans with Disabilities Act if nobody knows. And so if your job performance starts to suffer and no one knows why, then you might be dealing with some issues later. But definitely make sure that the first time that you see your eye doctor, you want to get a copy of that visual report, because everything you do after that is going to rely on if you have a documented visual impairment. Some of the resources that you can contact are, whether you're school age or not, is every state has a Department of Office Vocational Rehabilitation Services. They're usually the main house for the state. Sometimes they're separated, but the OVR or the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, is always usually above, and then they have visual services that come in. So by registering for them, you go, you give them a call, you say, hey, I'm experiencing vision loss. I'd like to register as a client with you guys, so that you can get services. And they will assist you in doing that. But the first thing they're going to ask you for is documentation of your eye condition, and that comes from your medical doctor. So having some copies of that around in order to share that and get connected for service, would be definitely something that you would want to do. In order to find that information, you can always go on Google and do a search for state departments of the blind and visually impaired, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, state services. They deal with everybody, adults as well as children. And they do offer services that will be free of charge to you, so it's important that you would want to sign up, and as well as many professionals there that will assist you in getting the services you need. So, once you've contacted your state department of the visually impaired and blind, and you are now maybe a client or you're working through that, there are some people that you might actually end up coming in contact with. And, or if you need service and you're not getting the answers you want, I wrote down some names and definitions of the people that you might be able to ask for help. The first person that they have is the Director of Special Services. That's usually the guy who's in charge of everybody. And so when all else fails, you can always look up his email and give him a call. You'll also be assigned a case manager or a coordinator. And in those instances, these case managers or coordinators are sort of like the go-to person. So you'll have an orientation and mobility specialist or a rehabilitation teacher, a whole bunch of people working together, and that case manager is usually the one that coordinates everyone together to get them to communicate so that they're all working on the same page and documenting and working toward what your goals are. And it's important that when you're dealing, with the Office, of Blindness or Visual Service, that you're addressing what your goals are. I mean, as professionals, we're going to have a whole bunch of ideas about what you think we think you should do or what we think you should learn. But the most important thing to remember is that you guys are in charge of those services. You guys are driving the services that you get from us. We can't force you to do what you don't want. And we can't say, oh, we're not going to provide this service for you unless you do that. It doesn't work. Now, I've heard some cases where people have tried, but really, they're designed to help the user and help that client. You might actually get a social worker. When I deal with social workers in the children's population, it's usually because the social workers are assigned to anyone under the age of 18. And the social worker is the one who will assist you with getting services in the home for your child, provided that those services are for home use and not for educational use. So if you needed a CCTV at home, or you needed a screen reader at home, or you needed additional orientation mobility services after school hours, it would then fall on the state to provide those services for you, for children. And the case manager, the workers, or the contact person is usually social workers for them. You'll have a rehabilitation teacher, and if anyone has not heard of what a rehabilitation teacher does, basically she'll go ahead and evaluate what your skills are. She might actually come to your home and say, hey, show me what we're dealing with. Rehabilitation teachers will come into your homes and help you label your stove. They will teach you skills for cleaning. They will teach you skills for cooking, organizational skills, as well as Braille. They'll assist you in teaching you some of the assistive technology that you're learning. So the assistive technology, or actually the rehabilitation teacher, is kind of like the adult model of a teacher of the visually impaired. And they teach a lot more of the daily living skills than we are permitted to teach as teachers of the visually impaired in the school. Another person you might come in contact with is a low vision rehabilitation specialist. Now that person usually teaches low vision technology in terms of devices, like a monocular or a magnifier or a telemicroscope. So they'll come in and they'll provide assessment and training, for you to get you the best optical device to best use the vision or remaining vision that you have. They also deal, with eccentric viewing. So if you're experiencing a visual field loss, what we do is we will go ahead and evaluate what your visual fields are, and we will basically kind of look at like a clock face, like the analog clock, and we'll say, take a look at 12 and tell me how it looks up there. Take a look at 1. Take a look at 2. And we'll figure out where is it that you have the best field. There's usually a spot that's better than others. And so we try to teach people to use the best visual or the remaining vision that they have. So we'll go ahead and we'll figure out where the best visual field is using eccentric viewing, and then try to teach people how to look in that direction so we're using the most of your vision with the best acuity and best field. The Assistive Technology Specialists, that you'll meet over in the state agencies will also go ahead and they will take a look at, your job and say, what will you need to complete that job? And they'll go through some recommendations in terms of equipment that they think you may need or may not need. They go over screen readers, magnifiers, optical character recognition or OCR software, as well as they've got machines that'll scan to read with you. They work with people with switches, refreshable braille displays. There's lots of things that the Assistive Technology Specialists will do. In terms of orientation mobility specialists, I think that we've all kind of come into contact with them, and basically we're the people that will teach you how to independently move through your environment, whether that's at home or at school, in the community, your grocery store. We come out and walk you through it and help you until you're independent doing that. The other thing that they have down there is they have job counselors and job trainers and or transition trainers, and I've seen them called many things. So in the event that you're looking for a job, these people will assist you in finding employment. They will also assist you in maintaining your employment. So if you've just come up with, a problem where you're going, oh, I'm going to lose my vision, I'm employed, I think I'm going to lose my job, as long as you're aligned with the state, get in contact, with your job counselor or your social worker and say, hey, can we get someone to meet with my employer? Can we come up with some services? What can we do to get me to perform the way I usually did at work before this event happened? In terms of school districts, I just kind of mapped them out there in terms of their hierarchy and the people that you might actually see over in a school district. And usually you'll see a director of special services, which again is always your go-to person. So if you don't get the answers you want, they're always going to be the person. The one that deals mostly with, blindness is the special ed coordinator. You might have a supervisor of special services programs. And I just listed these names up there as things that you might want to, if you're looking for someone to contact in your school and you're looking for what that name might be, these are the people. Your child might also have a teacher of the visually impaired, and the teachers of the visually impaired teach Braille, as well as assistive technology, daily living skills, and an orientation mobility specialist. Even though you may be affiliated with the state agency for the blind, you should also know that in many states and around the country, there aren't just state agencies for the blind. They also have local agencies for the blind, typically called commissions for the blind, associations for the blind. They usually, provide the same services that the state will provide in your local area through them. Usually they're affiliated with the state, so it's a quick, register with them process, and you can get orientation mobility specialists for them too. I often find that the local agencies from the associations as well as the commissions are the first to come out to the home. Like the rehabilitation teachers will actually come out to your home and help you label everything. Where you might go into a state agency and they want to work with you on site and not in your home. They do come out to the home, but I think it's important that you advocate and say, hey, I really need someone to come out to my house. It's great that you're going to show me this pretend kitchen and we're going to cook on this stove that's not mine and I'm really good at that, but who's going to come out to my house and really do it for me? Help me set this up so that I don't have to call you next time. And so rehabilitation teachers for the state will come out and do that. And if you can't get them to do it, then the associations or the commissions in your local area will also assist you in doing that. Some other organizations for the blind and visually impaired in order to help you figure out, and there's tons of them, but I listed the big ones, and I thought that you might be interested in them. The first one is called AER, and it's the Association for Education and Rehabilitation for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Basically, it's us as vision professionals all kind of join up with AER, and we support each other, we do trainings, we do conferences. But why is that important to you? Well, you could see where their conferences are and get information. They have online webinars for you. And if you get stuck in a jam and you say, I've been looking for an O&M teacher or a rehab teacher, or I'm stuck in my state and I can't figure out where I can get service from, give them a call. They'll be able to provide you with some resources and help you out. They're a really good organization that way. One that's affiliated with them, the other one, is the Academy for Certification of Vision Rehabilitation and Education Professionals, ACV-ERP. Wonderful, great organization. I posted up their website there because what they do is they have a list of all of the certified professionals listed by state. So if you want to know who those people are that are certified in your area to provide orientation mobility or rehabilitation teaching, they're definitely on their site. Do you need to be certified in order to teach that? No, you don't. It's state by state. I know in California, I believe I heard that you don't have to have certification as an orientation mobility instructor, but you certainly have to have a master's degree and or some college training. The other one is the American Foundation for the Blind. They also provide services to blind, low vision clients, as well as professionals. They do a lot of online professional development training, and another good place to call for resources. If you get stuck, if you need someone to ask questions to, they're really great. And the other one that we have over here is NFB, and I'm sure we've all kind of heard of NFB. They're one of the biggest organizations around. I think they have the best lawyers I've ever seen. They're very good. And they're definitely, anytime you call up there, there's always someone that'll direct you to the right office in order to kind of find you the services or the help that you need. If they're not able to provide it for you, they do give out, information on who you should contact. The last one I have up here is very similar to the ACV-ERP, but they're called the National Blindness Professional Certification Board. They're the ones that certify blind orientation and mobility teachers. All right. So, and they also, like ACV-ERP, and they also do, they also certify sighted people as well, but they do provide certification. So they're another resource, say, if you're looking for an orientation and mobility specialist, in your state or your area that maybe you want to independently contract with, or the state's not giving you good service, you can always go ahead and check up on their website and see who is certified and who's not. I think we've already talked about what an orientation mobility specialist does. We provide you with instruction to help you relearn how to do the same things that you were already doing in life, but with low vision. So, what does it mean? Well, basically, what happens is we get a copy of your doctor report from your doctor, and we take a look at it, and we review it. We'll give that doctor a call, have them explain to us, what your visual impairment is if we haven't found the information online. And then we do what's called a functional vision assessment. Has anyone had a functional vision assessment, or have you heard of that? Yes? Yeah? Okay. If you haven't had one, it might be important to talk. What it does, it's different than that exam at the eye doctor, because what we do is we say, tell me, how well can you see, at what distance, and under what conditions? Because if it's dark, you're not going to be able to see the same. If it's raining, you're not going to be able to see the same, because you're going to have all of that glare off the water and the headlights and everything of that nature. So we go ahead and we say, I want to get a really good picture of what this person can see. So we do our own examination that's non-medical and come up with a good idea of, what your visual acuity is. How far away do you have to be from something in order to see it? What's your visual threshold? Things of that nature. We also may make recommendations for equipment and travel, as well as we provide direct instruction to clients with low vision and blindness, and those are all based on their goals. I can't tell you that you're going to use a cane. I can't make anyone do that, but I can tell you why we might recommend a cane. All right? And the first thing I would say about a cane is not a label. All right? Just because you have a cane, it does not identify you. It does identify you, but it's not just you. I try to tell my students, when I first show them a cane, I said, think of your cane like a seatbelt. If you got in the car with your mom, you'd put your seatbelt on, right? She's a good driver, right? But somebody else might not be a good driver. You could hit their car, right? I was like, if you have your seatbelt on, you're protected. Well, if you're crossing the street with low vision, none of us as sighted drivers are aware that you don't see us. So using that cane as an identifier, even if you're just holding it, tells us as sighted people, oh, that person does not see us. We need to look out. It's like your seatbelt is what I try to tell my students. It'll offer you a little protection under white cane law, which states, that cars must yield for anyone traveling with a white cane. So if you're struck by a car and you have a white cane, they're in big trouble. So if you want to, they're definitely in big trouble. So, but if you don't have that cane, you've got nothing to go by, So some of the reasons that, and there are lots of different canes, but some of the reasons that I might recommend a cane is that after I've done a functional vision assessment or I've evaluated your vision, I'm going to take a look and say, there's 3 big points that I say, you might need a cane. If you have problems with depth perception and you can't find the curb or you can't tell if the stairs or a ramp, or you have difficulty even transitioning from, carpet to tile, you're like, is that a hole or is it tile? Well, that might be an instance to me and says, well, if we had that cane, that tactile information would be able to tell you. Your cane would fall off the curb before your feet do. So that's something to think of. In terms of visual fields, if you have a reduced visual field, all right, we might recommend a cane. Because the overall premise of a cane is to find everything below your waist so that your eyes are up here and looking what's coming and not down here making sure that you're not going to trip over that crack. And that's what we see more often than not, is that people with low vision, as they're traveling, are staring at the ground. Their feet are very flat and they have a wide stance because they want to make sure that everything is even, and level, or they're scared they're going to hit something and they move slower. So having a cane to find things on the bottom for you definitely gives you more freedom to look around and figure out what's coming up. Another instance is night blindness, of course. I mean, if you've got night blindness, you walk outside and it's dark. Those are some reasons that we might actually recommend a cane. Now, a cane, allow the user, the basic premise is the length of a cane is supposed to give you about 3 feet of advance notice before you contact an object. All right? So the cane length, and we've all seen the NFB canes. Everyone see NFB canes and the breakable canes? Some canes are very, very tall. Have you seen people with canes that are like almost up to their forehead? And there are some people where their canes are to their chin or here. How do they do that? Well, canes are chosen based on how fast you walk. So the faster you walk, the longer the cane you might need, because you want 3 feet of notice. So as soon as your cane hits something, you have to determine whether you're going to stop or not. If you're a slower traveler, or you have like limited mobility with your hand, you might have a shorter cane. But typically they're all about sternum length. That's about the height they should be, is approximately at your sternum and or higher. And it really is a personal choice. I could say to you, hey, I think that you're really walking, you walk really fast and I think that you should have, a taller cane. And you could tell me, no, it's not comfortable, it gets in my way, I don't want that. Okay, that's your decision. You can't make anyone choose something that they don't want. So again, a cane will assist you in identifying what things are on the ground, so your eyes are up and looking. So if you think about it, it might be something that you might want to choose to use. There's a couple different cane options and or types. For those of you who do not need a cane, there's something called an ID cane. An ID cane looks like a regular cane, but is really thin. It's pencil-like. It looks like a pencil, and it's long, but it's only there for identification. You don't use it on the ground. It doesn't find objects for you. People take it out of their bag when they're crossing the street and just go, oh, I'm crossing the street. It's called an ID cane. So it's not there to identify, drop-offs for you or anything, but it is there to assist you in crossing the street and, identify you as a person who might not see the oncoming traffic. They've got the straight canes like we've all seen from NFB. It's called a straight cane. Or they've got the collapsing canes. So there's several canes that will break down to 3, 4 sections so you can pack them up and put them away. Those canes come in aluminum and or graphite. You should be given choices by your orientation mobility specialist. No one should just hand you a cane and say, oh, here's your cane. you should be able to pick. It's not here's my cane. It's, there's different canes for different people. For instance, the aluminum canes are far more sturdy, but they're aluminum. And so every time the weather changes, they have a tendency to get stuck. And I can't break them down because they swell. Where the graphite canes never get stuck, and they're awesome, but they're a little less durable. They also have, telescoping canes. So, it kind of sort of like the I-80, with a big telescope. You can go ahead and snap it out there. Some people like those. We also use adapted canes. So those are canes that we make for people with limited mobility or children who are just learning to do them. In addition to your cane length, if you haven't had a choice in picking, there are several different tips that go on your cane, or the little ball at the bottom of your cane. There are a couple different kinds that you can purchase that'll make travel easier and or harder depending on where you're at. For example, they have the pencil tip cane, and it's, very simple. You do 2-point touch, tapping it on the ground, but one of the downfalls of that is it gets stuck in cracks, and so when you're centering your cane and you get that tip caught in the crack of the sidewalk and you take a cane to the gut, you're like, oh, this, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like this cane tip. There are different cane tips that will keep that from happening. They have another one called a marshmallow tip, which is a larger ball, and they actually spin and you drag it on the ground like constant contact. So when you contact those cracks in the sidewalk, it rolls over it instead of getting the cane in the gut. Larger ones, they have a larger ball cane. Usually if you're traveling in the grass or you're in a more rural area, one of the downfalls are they're a little heavier. So when you're moving your cane back and forth, your wrist can get tired. You kind of have to pick, which is more beneficial. As well as your teardrop, and I always put this one up there because I love this one. This one's called the Boondabasher, somewhere over in Africa. It's pretty cool. It's like a little cane hook. It's for like traveling through the brush. I've yet to see one though, but I really want to see one. So what are some of the things that we teach as orientation mobility specialists? Because we just don't teach cane. We teach money identification. So if you're going to the store and you can't identify your money, how are you going to do that? Well, there's lots of different systems. We have folding systems. We'll teach you to fold all the 1s or the 5s and the 10s and the 20s in a different order. We have different apps like the Looktel Money Reader, which is a wonderful app where you can simply take any dollar, wave it in front of the camera of your iPhone, and it'll tell you $5, $10, $20. So that makes it a lot easier, when you're putting your money away. Another thing that we do is, shopping is a concern. And everyone wants to go shopping. So we work on, when you get to the store, what do you do? Well, we're like, okay. I remember going out with one of my students, and I heard the doors opening back and forth. And I said to him, he says, well, I want to go to the store. I said, oh, okay, great. I was like, do you hear the electric doors? He's like, yep. I was like, all right, well, walk through. And so we walked through the electric doors, and I said, okay, now what would you do? And he goes, I don't know. I was like, well, do you hear the cash registers? He's like, yeah. I was like, walk over to the cash registers. So we walked over to the cash registers, and he stands there, and he goes, well, what am I supposed to do now? I was like, you're supposed to ask them and say, hey, I have a visual impairment. I'm here to do some shopping. Is there anyone here that might be able to assist me as a personal shopper? And he was like, I can do that? I was like, yes, you can. And so he walked up and did it, and someone came right over and, came over, and like they do, you might encounter this if you're out with an O&M teacher. Hopefully your O&M teacher does something different, where I always find it funny. Tony, who's my student, will walk in, and he asked for assistance. And he's standing there waiting for assistance, and here comes somebody to assist him, but they don't talk to him. They talk to me, like I'm a translator. And I'm like, oh, no, not me. He called you. Pick him. But you'll get that sometimes. And so you just have to say, oh, I'm right here, and be like, oh, I called for you. Thanks for coming, and just I kind of give people little prompts, like, I can talk. The other things that we work on is public transportation and driver services. So we'll teach you how to ride the bus. But in many states, that if you're not close to a bus stop, they do have what's called like door-to-door pickup. Is anyone familiar with that? You can get door-to-door pickup from if you live in a major city. So I live over in Lancaster County, and we have what's called Red Rose Transit. Now, Red Rose Transit states, their laws indicate that if you have a visual impairment or physical disability that keeps you from safely getting to a bus stop, then they will send a separate van to your house for door-to-door pickup. You have to make that arrangement. So if you need to get to work, and you're riding either in DC, the Metro, they've got Metro Access. So Metro Access will send someone out to do door-to-door pickup for you. As orientation mobility specialists, public transportation is going to be something that our clients frequently use. And we teach them that, yes, there are discounts available. So if you have a visual impairment, then yes, you can go ahead and get a discounted rate. And so we help you to register for those services. We also teach visual scanning techniques. So if you're looking for that street sign or that door sign, or you're looking for something, we teach scan patterns, to figure out how you can visually scan your environment to make sure that you don't miss it. We do object identification, with stairs. So that usually falls into like the low vision, because you'll get. I have gotten clients who are like, no cane. I've got low vision and I can do it. I'm like, okay. Well, let's see. So, here we are, and we're walking out, and we are down near the courthouse. And if any of you have ever seen courthouse, they have all these really long descending stairs. And I said to him, I was like, do you see the stairs? He's like, what stairs? I was like, oh, but you don't need that cane. Okay. I was like, well, how would you know that how would you know that the stairs are coming up? And he's like, well, I would just wait till I got closer. I said, but there's another way. He goes, how? I was like, can you see the shadows on the sidewalk? He goes, yeah. I said, how do they look? He goes, they're all broken. I was like, that means they're stairs. And he goes, oh. So we teach patterns in terms of shadow recognition. If your shadows are broken on stairs, you know that it's going to be stairs, or else it would be straight. If you're coming up the stairs, there's color identification between the landing and the stair threshold itself. So if you look for those visual identifiers, you'll be able to figure out what the depth of that stair is visually. So we give techniques for, visual cues. We also do how to pick visual landmarks. You're already looking for things, as you're walking down. You're not gonna see, the small things anymore, but you're gonna see things based on size, shape, color, and contrast. And so we teach you how to filter out and say, let's look for those colors, let's look for that contrast, help me pick a good landmark to orientate yourself. Echolocation. We teach echolocation and sound strategies, so that if you're walking down the hallway and you're looking for that opening, you'll be able to hear it. And we'll teach you how to discern, direct and indirect sound. We actually come out to your home or to your workplace, and we orientate you to that environment. So if you're at work, we come out to work and we go through the whole building with you. And if that's what you want us to do. If you're not sure where you're going or you need some strategies, that's what we do. In terms of, we do low vision device training, as well as monoculars and magnifiers, and lots of assistive technology. So the nice thing about, the assistive technology now in terms of orientation and mobility is there are a lot of things out there that will get you the information that people visually pick up in another sense, being auditorily. And that would bring us to BlindSquare. BlindSquare does just exactly that. So BlindSquare is an app that acts as a navigational tool for the visually impaired and blind, and it announces information about their environment, their nearby businesses, their streets, and public transportation, whether you're walking and or you're stationary. So if you've recently lost your vision and you're now walking, down the street of your main town, things are gonna look different. And you're like, well, I was really looking for the CVS over on the corner. It doesn't look right. How am I gonna know if I'm there? BlindSquare will tell you that. What it does is, if we think about the skills that sighted travelers use, sighted travelers, visually scan and preview their environment while they're traveling. BlindSquare does that by auditorily updating you as you're traveling. So if you're walking down the street and you're looking at all those businesses that are down that street, like this, we are as sighted people, BlindSquare would be announcing those businesses as you were walking down the street, so you would get that information auditorily. Another thing that, one of the skills that we use is being able to visually perceive distance. Once you lose your vision, you're like, how long have I been walking? It seems like I've been walking a really long time. Did I go 10 feet? Did I go 50 feet? And BlindSquare has pedometers in there, so it will tell you how fast you walk, how far you've gone, and it will also update you and tell you, that the intersection of Cherry and Orange is approximately 20 feet away. And you're like, oh, well, that works. Now I know. Another thing that you can do with it is lots of us, we use visual landmarks. Well, you can now set your own landmarks with BlindSquare, and you can set those as auditory landmarks. So if you go to a place frequently, or if there's a particular object in the yard that you pass that you want to have announced to you while you're traveling so you don't miss it, you can do that using the BlindSquare app. So individuals experiencing low vision can become easily disoriented, and their ability to visually and scan to prove their environment is impaired. Now you can go ahead and take a look and say, hey, everything's going to look significantly different when I travel. How am I going to get that information? If I'm not using my vision, and if it's not reliable, I'm going to need to get that through auditory ways. So essentially, BlindSquare will allow the blind traveler to complete the same tasks for spatially updating without having to have a sighted guide present or someone with you. So, let's say, let's give an example. You're in the car, and you're traveling from Pennsylvania to Virginia with your friend. And it's going to be a 4-hour drive. And you're sitting there and you're going, am I there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And who wants to ask that question all over again? Because I've had some people say, I'm sorry, I really feel like a 5-year-old, but can you tell me how far away we are? I'm like, sure, you could do that. Well, you could have BlindSquare running in the background, and it would inform you. It updates you as you're driving. So if you have BlindSquare running in the background, in your car, or I always have my aftershock headsets on because, as much as I appreciate BlindSquare, the person next to me probably doesn't. So we use the aftershock headset, so I can still go ahead and talk to whoever is driving, but still get the information. So as you're driving, using BlindSquare, it'll consistently update. You are driving down 95. You are now passing Stafford County. This is the place where there's the museum here, and it'll announce museums, points of interest around you, and you're like, oh, that's great. It really works out well for children, too. Because if you think about it, my children are always looking out the window as I'm driving from my house to the grocery store, and they're visually updating themselves and where they go. Well, my other students who are visually impaired, we have their parents, they hook up their GPS, and they use BlindSquare while they're driving in the car with their students, with their children, so that their children hear the route that they're traveling, they hear the businesses that are around them, and they become more familiar and aware of what's in their environment. One of the nice things that, I had done was I had gone out, with a student, shopping, and before we go out to any of our lessons, I always have BlindSquare up. I make them, set the GPS coordinations and tell me when they're there. So as we were traveling, we were going to Walmart, and she did her job, and she picked out her little things, and it was great. And she goes, can we go to McDonald's now? I was like, where's McDonald's? She said, well, they said it was in this complex. BlindSquare announced it. I was like, let me look. Oh, yes, it is. I was like, guess we can go to McDonald's. Because you can, if you found it and you can tell me, hey, great, let's go to McDonald's. So, yeah, I find that even with children, getting that information has been very rewarding. So, in terms of BlindSquare, there are some things that it will allow you to do. And one of the things that I like to, indicate for BlindSquare is that the most important thing is the settings, all right? And if you first turn on BlindSquare, you're probably using it with VoiceOver. Do we have any VoiceOver users? Anyone use VoiceOver? Yeah. BlindSquare is awesome. It has its own audio feedback in it, but if you're using it with VoiceOver, sometimes there's two things talking at once, and you're like, how do I make it stop? What do I listen to? And you're like, uh-oh, what do I do? So the first thing you need to do is, you always go into the BlindSquare settings menu, and I have that up there, and we can go over the settings for that. Now, the settings that you want to do is your filtering and distance. And I can tell you that those are directly on the main page. And your filtering, BlindSquare will filter how much information you want to hear, all right? It goes anywhere from like 0.8 miles away to 1.2 miles away. Now, if I'm walking 2 blocks down the road, I don't really want to hear every business announced to me within a 2.1 mile radius away. So changing those settings will definitely go ahead and get you information, and you can narrow that down. So some of the features for BlindSquare. I'm about to turn this on here. Turn on BlindSquare for you.
Search places within radius of 1.24 miles.
There's that distance filter. I don't want to do 1.25 miles.
Distance 575 feet.
Well, first I'm going to go
General entertainment. Mensam in James. About 120 feet. Cafe. Spices and Beyond. 535 feet at 10 o'clock.
Now I'm going to
Deli Bodega. 2003.
I'm going to pause the speech here quickly, for her, just to say that one of the things, the first thing I wanted to talk about is one of the features is called Your Location. This is my favorite feature. It's called Your Location because literally, if I shake my phone, it's going to tell me information. It's going to tell me, it's going to tell me where is the closest address. So if I'm standing in front of 210, it's going to say, you're at 210. I'm like, ooh, that's helpful. I was like, then it's going to tell you the street that you're on. So now it says, you're at 210 Cherry Street. I'm like, even better. Then it'll say, it'll tell you your heading, the direction in which you're traveling, based on north, south, east, west, or cardinal directions. You're like, ooh, I like that. And then it'll tell you when your next intersection is approaching, your next upcoming intersection, the name of that intersection, and how far away it was. And that feature came about when I talked to the app developer, Ilka, and I said, as I'm traveling with my students, I could use Google Maps, and Google Maps is going to give me directions. I was like, but it doesn't give me enough information. Like, it doesn't talk to me all the time. I'm going, why isn't it talking to me? Am I going the wrong way? Is it still working? Is it not still working? And you're like, uh-oh. Or Google will give you information, say, hey, start and head west toward Cherry Street and make a left. And you're like, good, that's great. Which way's west? Which direction am I facing? What should I do now? So one of the things that you can do with BlindSquare is that you can go ahead and figure out where your location is. So as my students get their GPS, what we usually do is we'll say, okay, if you want to use Google Maps, you can do that. I'd like to see you do that first. I was like, but tell me where you are. And I'll turn the speech back on here. So let's see if I can get it here to work.
Search places within radius of 575 feet. Your location. Nearest crossing is Dulles Corner Boulevard and Dulles Corner Drive. Distance 400 feet south. Shake your iPhone to check into Hyatt Dulles at Dulles International Airport. Address is 2300 Dulles Corner Boulevard, Herndon, heading northeast.
That's a lot of information. Now, when I first take out, my students in traveling, they're like, all I need is an iPhone. As long as I have an iPhone and technology, I'm going to be able to get wherever I'm going to go. And that's a great idea. I wish it worked like that, but it doesn't. Just like, I have many students say to me, I don't need to learn how to use a cane because I'm going to get a guide dog. And you're like, oh, have you checked into those dog guide schools yet? Well, no. As soon as I graduate, I'm going to get a guide dog. I was like, did you realize that in order to get a guide dog, you have to be able to demonstrate good orientation and mobility skills using a cane first? They just don't give you a dog. You have to be able to orientate yourself, whether you're using a cane and or a dog. The dog, you can't just whisper down to your dog and say, take me to Walmart. That would be awesome. But, that's the perception of a lot of the students. They're like, I don't need this cane. I'm just going to tell my dog, take me to Walmart, And I'm sure that there are some dogs that have been to Walmart enough times that you could probably say that. But that all happens with training. It's step-by-step training with that dog to get you that particular route. So even though technology in BlindSquare is awesome, I can talk to Siri, though. I can say, take me to Walmart. And she'll say, well, you want directions? I can give you directions. You'll be like, great, I'll take her directions. But she's not going to take me there. So, using your location while you're walking, my students end up shaking it all the time. Just because I need to have that I need that positive reinforcement that I'm going the wrong way or the right way and I'm not off course. So even as we're walking down the street, they're like, I know that I'm supposed to walk 3 blocks to Cherry Street. I'm like, all right. And they might shake their phone 4 times before they even get 3 blocks just to make sure they're going the right way. Am I still heading north? And that works out really well. Another one of the things that I often encounter is that when you're traveling and you're teaching street crossing, one of the things that, has a tendency to happen is that once you cross the street, they believe that they're on a different street, that they're not on the same one. So even though you're traveling down your parallel traffic and you cross that street, once they've crossed the street, they get lost. And they're like, oh, I'm not on Cherry Street anymore. I'm on Orange Street. No, we crossed Orange Street. You're still on Cherry. Well, I don't believe you. Well, shake your phone, and then it'll confirm. So they get to do a lot of that self-checking. So I think that the location feature of works out really well. You can shake your phone, and I've demonstrated it there for you there. Ideas for using it. If you're lost, you can't figure out where you're going, spatially updating to hear the current street address that you're at, to hear the heading to confirm you're heading the right direction. You can do that. Another one is the look around feature, and I'm going to turn this one on here.
Voiceover on. BS Beta. Search. Button. Tools. Button. Foursquare. Other. Filter it. Mute speak. Look around. Button. Search.
Now, this look around feature,
Professional and other places. Office.
and you can watch. If I stand here and face north,
Northwest. Dulles Access Road and Sully Road. 0.25 miles. Dulles Greenway and Sully Road. 0.36 miles. Travel and transport. Hotel.
so
Hyatt Dulles at Dulles International Airport.
now watch me turn my body the other way.
General travel to the north, to the northeast. Innovation Avenue and Rock Hill Road, 0.26 miles. Arts and entertainment, general entertainment. Mensa Min James. Nightlife spot. To the south, to the east, to the southeast. Sunrise Valley Drive and Dulles Corner Drive, 650 feet.
I'm just going to stop that for a second just to kind of go over it.
Tools. Voiceover off.
Now look around. So based on how you are positioning your phone, and that's what I tell my students, I say, hey, if you wanted, they're like, I wanted to go to the McDonald's. And you're like, great, where's McDonald's? And they're like, well, they said it was northeast and stuff like that. They will turn on their phone and put on the look around feature and just start to angle. Oh, it says McDonald's is that way. Oh, good. And so they'll actually turn their body to figure out what's over on the north or on the west, what's north, what's south, what are these businesses, how do I get there? And so you can go ahead and preview your environment that way, which works out really well in terms of utilizing the look around feature. So you can hear information about your businesses, upcoming street addresses. And basically it's based on your position of how you're facing. The other one is the Around Me feature, which will announce to you, oops, let me get back into my screen here.
Voice BS Beta. Search. Search places within search. Tools. Button.
And it does something similar,
Around Me. Button.
but it's not based on your position.
Button. Tools. Button. Look around. Around Me. Button. Search. Button.
So now it's going to search for things around me.
My places. Search. Around Travel me. Transport. Search. Common Northrop Grumman. GOI. Hyatt Dulles Travel Transport National Airport. Sheraton Herndon Dulles Airport Hotel. Spices and Beyond. 2,325 Dulles Corner Deli.
So utilizing the Around Me feature will also give you information about things that are around you. And you don't have to turn your body, so you can hear those things. The other one that I like here is called the
Corner Drive. Voice over about 0 feet at 9 o'clock.
Nearby Intersections, because that's the one that gets me the best.
Search places within.
So in Nearby Intersections, I simply went in and I hit Nearby Intersections. Now you can listen to all the intersections that are near you.
BS Beta. Nearby intersections. Back. Button. Dulles Corner Boulevard and Dulles Corner Drive. 405 feet at 9. Dulles Corner Boulevard and Dulles Corner Drive. 400 feet at 10 o'clock.
That one's at 10 o'clock.
Dulles Greenway and Dulles Access Road. Dulles Greenway and Dulles Access Road. About 610 feet. Sunrise Valley Drive and Dulles Corner Drive. Sunrise Valley Drive and Dulles Corner Drive. Sunrise Valley Drive and Dulles Corner Drive. 700 feet at 9 o'clock. Voiceover off.
So BlindSquare will definitely go ahead and give you some information in an auditory way that you may have been used to using your vision for. And you're going, I can't see those things anymore. What else could I do? You can certainly go ahead and utilize that. The last thing that BlindSquare actually does do, and we're kind of running out of time here for me to demonstrate this, but there's something called simulation mode. And what simulation mode does is that you don't have to be on the street. If you're planning a route, if I was planning to go to San Diego today, wouldn't that be nice? I love San Diego. I put in her address, I say, well, what's around her address? Where might I eat? What could I do? So by going ahead and having it in simulation mode, now BlindSquare believes you're there in San Diego. And it's only going to give you information about that location you put in. So if, I'm at Hard Rock Cafe, it's going to tell me everything around that Hard Rock Cafe within a 1.2 miles away. I could actually simulate a route with Google. So if I wanted to walk, from Lisa's house to McDonald's, I could certainly go ahead and plug that in, listen to it, and as I'm sitting on my couch, move my phone around and listen to things that I will pass to prepare myself for that trip. So that's what I always try to tell my students. I say, preview your environment first. If you're not going out and checking out what's in there, at least listen to what's around you, what's available for you to go to. Because as you're walking and you hear BlindSquare announce to you that, you've passed the CVS, you're going, oh, wait, I heard that before. That's a landmark. It's no longer a visual landmark, but it's an auditory landmark. And with that said, can I go into any questions, BlindSquare, any questions about orientation mobility services? I have a question over there. Yeah, she's coming. I wasn't quite sure she saw you.
With the BlindSquare, you have a compass, a GPS, a voiceover, and a few other programs running in the background there. How much power usage does that take up? I mean,
I'm not even going to pretend. Yes. You can get about 3 to 4 hours on your iPhone using voiceover and BlindSquare before it dies. I would use the Mophie case, which is that battery that goes, on top of it. I would definitely have a portable battery. But I did find that the nice thing, in order to reserve your battery, you can utilize BlindSquare. You don't have to in the background. So as you're traveling, you can actually drive BlindSquare through your headsets like aftershock. So by just hitting the button on the side of the headphone, it will announce to you your location. So you've got less screen, less battery use, all of that stuff. Make sure you turn off your screen, make everything black, save your battery.
Okay. Want to ask anything? I was told once by the person who gave me my cane, they kind of just did give me a cane, the person who taught me, that it had to go up to the nose instead, and I don't think I was really taught properly. They just took me to a place I actually knew and just told me to wave around.
Yeah.
That was actually, that's how I was taught.
So you choose that.
Yeah, I choose that. And also you brought about the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's at least one presidential candidate who has actually wants to repeal it, so just actually keep informed is all I'm going to say.
Really? Oh, I didn't hear that one. But in terms of your cane, like I said, the cane, really is based on how tall you are. It doesn't necessarily have to come up to your nose. I prefer my students to have up to their chin, but it all depends. If they've got low tone or, it's really designed for the user. Is there anyone else with some questions?
So I have a question. In the look around feature, for example, if you're in that application, can you just shake it if it's somewhere you want to go, point and shake and move, or do you have to go back in to your location and then walk?
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, the look around would be like preview. So if you heard something that you wanted, right? Say I always like use, say you heard McDonald's, because that comes off the top of my head, and you're like, oh, great, I want to go to that McDonald's. Well, then on the main screen of the page, right, you just hit restaurants, and McDonald's will be listed, and you just click it, and it'll take you right there.
So it's not a lot of looking and clicking and moving back into pages and all that?
No, there's not a lot of backtracking or backlinking. Everything kind of runs in the background, with it. Now, you may have some confusion in terms of that BlindSquare doesn't do turn-by-turn directions. We have...
Only 24% of battery left.
Oh, that's nice. But she's reminding me. But yeah, when Google will give you auditory directions, and so will BlindSquare. All right, and so sometimes they fight. When I'm traveling and I'm only listening to, say, BlindSquare, or I'm listening to Google Maps give me the turn-by-turn directions, I change my filter settings to only hear my points of interest or nearby intersections, as opposed to hearing every business. So you can filter out what information you want to hear and don't want to hear. But it's not a lot of backtracking. But it does, once it opens up through, say, Google, it goes right back into BlindSquare, and you're driving everything through BlindSquare.
Thank you. Could you tell us where BlindSquare is getting all this data from and how up to date it is, how accurate it is?
Yes, I can. Actually, BlindSquare uses the databases from, say, Foursquare, as well as Google. And so their information is as accurate as Foursquare and Google, and it changes every single day in their database. So if anyone's not sure what the Foursquare application is, it's a check-in. People share information about places that they've been. You can check into Foursquare through BlindSquare. You could also order an Uber taxi through BlindSquare, because they've paired that in as well. But yeah, they have really big databases. They're using Foursquare as well as Apple Maps, as well as Google Maps, where they're getting the information from.
Have you heard of TapTapC?
I have heard of TapTapC. I like TapTapC and VizWiz. I've tried Be My Eyes, but I haven't had much success with that. Now, in terms of VizWiz, I thought that was a little better because I was able to ask it a question. So we used VizWiz in terms of, you ever go to those vending machines to go get a Coke, and you're like, oh, look, they put the number pad in Braille. That's awesome. Can't see what's behind that glass, to know what I'm supposed to pick. I mean, it's like putting Braille on a drive-up ATM, and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense, And so you're like, okay, well, at least you're complying with the law. But, what we were able to do is, we'll go ahead, my students, and I'll say, you wanted that Coke? And they're like, yeah. So we'll take a picture of it, using VizWiz, and then we'll say, what number is Coke? And we'll send it in, and they give us back the answer. Or something that might be even faster is if you've got Facebook contacts or Skype contacts, or, you could call someone and say, I'm trying to get this Coke. Can you just tell me what number it is really quick? And take a picture of it and send it to them, and they'll let you know. Any other questions in terms of that? I know that on my webpage, I've gone through about 330 apps for the blind and visually impaired. And the name of my website is actually called andreashead.wikispaces.com. And it is up on the PowerPoint, which I think that she'll be sharing. But on my website, I've got 300 apps that I've tested. And I actually put them in categories so you can pick. So if you're looking for a magnifier, or if you are looking for a GPS application, if you're looking for something that you can take a picture of your mail and have it read to you, it's up there. Prismo is the best OCR app I've come across. I know that they've got the NFB reader, but it's good. But you want to pay $99.99, or do you want to pay $9.99 for something? Anyone else have any questions?
All set. Thank you so much,
Great, thank you.
Andrea.